Hi, this is Ezekiel Dasho, and today is Halloween. I thought I would draw this jack-o'-lantern, and we will get started. So, the first thing that I'm going to do is pretty simple. This will go pretty fast, but I'm going to define my boundaries. And so, for instance, I've got the bottom here and the top somewhere up here. If it's sort of centered, it's the top of the page. Got a little leeway because we've got this really long uh, pumpkin stalk or whatever it's called, pumpkin stem. And so for this part here, um, I want to sort of look at the shape of the outline of the whole pumpkin. So on the back, from the topmost point I can see to the bottom, and the curvature. So we're going to start sketching in is basically this big um, oval kind of shape, and we want to stay true to form here and not worry about it being exactly geometrically perfect. It's got a natural pumpkiny look to it. I like that word, pumpkiny. And as we go along, we can make little adjustments, and we'll keep it light and loose and easy, and that'll help lend some layering to our shading as we go as well. So there I've basically got the outline shape of my pumpkin. I'm going to just draw the stem, the part of the stem that I can see, and it's kind of like this star shape almost. Um, you could break this into component pieces if seeing the lines is troubling or causing you any difficulty at all. Um, just going to draw right over that other line that I made. It's not a big deal. And I want to stay true to life too. So there's a little bit of curvature there, and obviously it's not a straight line in any part of it. It's a natural form, so there are no super straight lines. And here I'm just kind of sketching in where I see some of the shadows from the the indentations in the stem coming up, and then it's got this nice on the top. There's this sort of curved area where you can see the curves, and the texture's kind of a little dried and crackly. So, let's see. I want to apologize. I've got my model jack-o'-lantern right in front of me, and then I'm going to post the picture that I took, and the shadow here that's being cast is from the my subject, my jack-o'-lantern. So let's keep it rolling here, and kind of start getting an idea of where the lid is, the slit in the lid. And again, this is one of those things where you don't want it to look too precise, too perfect. A little bit of pumpkin guts there. And you just want to stay true to life, and it will look real for you. Keep it real. So we'll get into some of the texturing and stuff later. For now, we're just gonna keep on blocking, keep on trucking, and so let's get the rough shape and position of the eyes. We've got these pretty regular equilateral triangle sort of shapes. And I don't want to always say sort of. They're not sort of shapes. They are shapes. Um, it's that thing of when you're drawing and talking at the same time, and your brain doesn't necessarily work the exact same way as it does when you're just drawing or just talking. Um, so let's keep going with that. I just eyeballed it. I mean, I guess you could say, oh, this looks like, this distance here. It's about sides of the. It's about two sides of the triangle. But yeah, just have fun with it. It's not. In some ways, the more rigidly precise it looks, the less pumpkiny it's gonna look. So these little variations are gonna probably help rather than hinder. So I definitely wouldn't get a ruler out for this. This is more of a fun exercise for building and shading. And right now we're going to be done with the scaffolding of the shape very soon, and then that'll get us into a place where we can shade, and that's the fun. So here, and very thin line there. And let's get the mouth. And it's pretty even, so, we might want to say, well, let's get this angle here to where the tip of the mouth starts, and it comes up pretty high. So, that can help triangulate where the tip of the mouth is. And for people who are new to drawing, I mean, this is actually a pretty good exercise for just simple building. Let's go to the other side. And these simple building exercises are so good for people who are learning to do portraits and anything else, really, because it's just practice in constructing the form. And it's not necessarily the most intuitive way that a person would go about drawing something. Like a lot of people, when they sit down to draw something, they just push in hard. They expect a bunch of thick lines to turn into something that looks like what they see, and takes some degree of practice as an artist to draw like that and have it look real. So again, like I said, I'm working from a model, and I'm using a picture. I'll post a picture that I took side by side with the video. So there might be little differences in position, as to what you see on my page and what you see in the photo. That's just fine. If I were you, I would go from the photo. Or if it's easier, whatever feels right, go from the picture I'm doing, whatever. The main thing here are the principles that we're working with. Then our jack-o'-lantern's coming along nicely. And let's go ahead and throw in some shadows here. We've got this nice round shadow. That comes to the bottom of the picture. And there's sort of an inner, there's an inner and outer shadow. The inner shadow's kind of darker. It is darker. And the outer shadow's boundaries are a little bit hard to clearly see. So it can be a little bit shaded rather than drawn in almost. And on this side, we don't really have that outer shadow as much. But for the sake of brevity, we'll just go through here with cross-hatching and again, this is one of those spots where if I were not doing this on a video, I would turn the page so that it was in an angle that made this motion that I'm doing here easier to fluidly achieve. It would just make it a little easier to get those nice straight cross-hatching lines, which will give you a more even, realistic looking coverage and shading in your picture. So under here it's pretty dark. There's almost this third, I don't know why I say almost, there's kind of this third, again, I'm sorry, it's so waffly today, I don't know what it is. The inner shadow here, darker underneath. And then we can start getting into some of the texture and the ridges in the pumpkin. So what I'm seeing is a lot of the lines on the pumpkin kind of radiate from the stem, and there are some that are more pronounced and some that are less pronounced. None of them are super sharp, but some of them, you know, are more indented than others. And so that's what we're gonna add in here. Is this, I don't think I'm gonna go in and count the ridges and make sure that I'm completely photorealistic for this picture. It would just be very, very long and labor intensive, and a video I think no one would want to watch. I don't know if tedious is the right word for something like that, but people have different reasons for wanting to achieve photorealism, so I wouldn't want to dissuade you if that's what you wanted to do. So I mean, I am kind of, I guess the reason here that I'm saying kind of is because I am being mindful of the accuracy, but not to the point where I want to let it slow me down too much. I don't know. It's a fine line to draw, and it's something that I think is just a personal preference for this picture. I don't know if it's something that, I could tell you how to do in terms of how to make that decision for yourself, but it's sort of just balancing speed and accuracy. And that's a decision that everyone makes for themselves on any given piece, and that's great. So let's we'll make this a quick video here. I'm pressing a little harder here to get some of the darkness, and quickly get some of those in there. And then I've got some shading. It's the daytime and the candle's not inside the pumpkin, so the light's coming from the outside. And I think in a way having the darkness on the inside is a little spooky, symbolically. But it's just too bright in my room to do a picture with the candlelight in there. And let's see, we got some shadows here. And again, more shadows here. darkness there and darkness there. That's one of the more detailed spots on the picture, I'd say. So we've got all these nice lines there. And let's see, some pumpkin guts here. So this here, I would say don't make this a straight line here. Get in there and add a little texture, maybe capture some of the, we've got some pumpkin guts here, and we can texture that up a little bit in a second. But when you're going through here and darkening up the mouth, you've got this area in the middle maybe where it's the darkest. And then it's a little lighter off to the sides and stuff. And part of it's a little smooth, and part of it's a little chunky. And retaining that texture helps with the, again, like with the top, you don't want that totally smooth like it was cut out with a knife. So you can get these areas here where it's a little bit choppy, pumpkin-y, waffly. I am on fire. Let's see here. So this is, one of those drawing exercises where if you have been drawing for a long time, you might be asleep right now, just turning this off and being like, this is so boring. But if you're new, you might, hopefully find this very useful. And if you, if you've got students, or if you are just looking for activities, drawing activities with kids or whatever, like my daughter's not quite old enough to do this level of drawing yet, but kids who are a little older, they hit at a certain age, and this is the kind of thing that can be very fun for them. It's not super difficult, and it's not, the building process is pretty easy. And they can come out of it with a drawing that they're pleased with. And anytime you can, whatever the age, anytime you can help a drawing student achieve a picture that they're happy with, that they didn't know they had in them, that's the best feeling. That's, in a way, to me, that's even a better feeling than drawing something that I'm really proud of. Like it, I definitely, there's nothing like the sense of pride and satisfaction and, accomplishment that you get when you draw something that you really like. But even beyond that, there's just something about seeing someone else that you've shown something to, once they accomplish something, they might even do something that you didn't know they could do. And, you could have a drawing student who one day is drawing stick figures, and the next day they're drawing better than you, relatively speaking. And so hopefully this kind of exercise is helpful to all levels, but might be particularly interesting to in a way, it's a lot like shading a sphere or anything else. And no matter what level we are in drawing, I think we can always enjoy practicing shading. And there's just something about developing the tones and playing with the textures and trying to get something to feel as real in 2 dimensions on paper as it does 3-dimensionally in the studio. And so let's see. Back to what I was saying about like shading a sphere. The main thing that we have yet to do on the pumpkin here is to shade the main part of the form. And we've got the whole thing pretty much built. And we can see that the light is coming from the upper left in the camera from this area here. So what I'm going to do is preserve this area as relatively bright, and I want to keep that bright up to there. And then we will go through and shadow the pumpkin. Spooky. And there are some, we'll do some like little lighting effects at the end. There's some different ways that you could approach the shading here. I've decided to just treat each one of these ribbed components like it's its own little fiefdom. It's its own thing. The textures are definitely more diverse and varied than I've drawn them in so far. But you can see as the ribs go around here, it gets darker and darker. And I would recommend shading in softly these areas and then going back over the ones that are darker rather than trying to hit it all on one pass. You can also see that sort of down here on this side of the pumpkin, on the lower right side of the pumpkin, there's almost this bounce lighting from where the light is hitting my paper or the table and reflecting back up onto the bottom of the pumpkin. Very similar to the bounce lighting that we saw in one of my earliest videos about drawing a sphere, drawing a cube, and drawing a conical solid. Very similar to that look, and the physics of it are identical, basically, just a different shape. And so it's the kind of the darkest in this area off to the side where the lights up on the ceiling and the lights from the window are not reaching it. And let's put in some of these shapes and textures, and then we'll shade up the stem. And there are parts of the pumpkin where you kind of see this like bubbly almost texture. I'm treating those by just doing this circular wavy kind of motion here, where it's really just intended to shade a little more, but the shape of the stroke helps to impart that. It also helps it to not look like it was drawn mechanically by some kind of robot at the mall or something like that. Keep it human. Let's go in quite dark here so we can let's accentuate that baby a little bit. And then let's do this stem, and we've got this mostly black stem. It's got speckles. I guess it's super dark green, but It's like that kind of cool dark green that looks like black, like the kind that oh my gosh, why am I such a nerd? Well, like the kind that Aragorn wears in the Lord of the Rings movie. Ranger of the North that he is. um, so let's see. The texture on this is almost there for you, just in the paper if you're using a paper with any degree of tooth in it. But there's some sort of like lines and striations and kind of things like that. I can get a few of those in. I'm not going to worry about the details too much. As they say, the devil is in the details. Spooky. And that's probably enough to get the feeling of it across. And in some ways, like, from if you get bogged down in the details at the close-up view, you get blinders on, you can get into this situation. And I do it a lot. It's a mistake that I make a lot. But you can get into a situation where up close in that area that you're looking at, say I'm looking at these these three little dots here, and those dots look perfect. They look exactly like the three dots in front of me, just using these magical imaginary three dots as an example. But then when I step back, the rest of the picture looks really weird. And those three dots, nobody notices how good they look. They just notice how the rest of the picture doesn't look. Anyway, so it's important that you work on the close-up, but you pull back and consider the big picture frequently. And so sometimes I'll draw in close up, and then I'll like move as far away as I can. Sometimes when I'm not doing the videos, I'll stand back, like I will step away and from across the room look at it. And most of the time when somebody sees one of your pictures, they're going to be looking, like if you hang it on a wall or if they see it from across the room, that's they're going to be seeing it from a little bit of distance. They're not going to be seeing it right up close. So some of those details up close could look like a mess, but far away they'll look fantastic. It depends what the piece is, I guess, intended purpose is. And we've got some shadowing here, so we'll go ahead and get some of that in there too. And then up here, it's a little detail, but having the contrast on this side of the mouth. Well, I think, I see that contrast on my model, so that's the first reason why I want it there. I'm not trying to overdo it here, but I don't want it to look too gray either. And in some of the places on the mouth, like there is sort of this dark coloration. So we're getting to that point. And I'd say the last thing that I want to do as I'm finalizing this is I just want to go over it quickly with my eyes and make sure that I haven't left any areas completely, totally untouched. Like this area here, too white. So let's step back and look at it. And this area here, too regular. Let's give it a little bit of chunkiness and guts and stuff. So then we just do this little finalization this a little darker so that it has something to contrast against. And then likewise here. I want it to be the same as in the model, but if I start to lose some of the contrast, I need to make sure the contrast is similar to the model. So it's kind of this balancing act. So, you could, at this point, you've got your drawing pretty much to a point where you could put any amount of time that you wanted to into shading it from this point out and having it look whatever way you wanted it to. This would be an interesting picture to get a blender and use a blender on. I'm not going to do that in this video because I will get lost in that process and that will take another hour. But the texture does lend itself well to this sort of smooth. You could do a lot with the sort of smoothness and the wetness of the pumpkin. Wet because I just brought it in from outside and it's got a little bit of that dew. So it adds this shininess, which definitely, if you were going to get super photorealistic about, would be cool to capture. We will just darken up a few of these here. And maybe just do a little more off the indentations over here. All right. Well, thanks for being with me today for this picture. I hope to post a few more Halloween themed pictures throughout the day. So hope to see you again real soon. Don't forget to like and subscribe and hit the little bell to get notifications about my future videos. It helps the algorithm. And yeah, mash that like button. I'm working on building my channel and I appreciate your support. Have a great day.